So we've looked at how we should structure a need statement and thinking about the ladder of abstraction, but let's look at how we'd actually do that in reality with our field notes. So here's an example of a mind map, and it's a mind map taken from part of the baking video that you probably will have seen. And in this case, Mom is grading carrots using a metal grater and trying to measure the quantity of ingredients. And you can see here on the left-hand side is the observation. There's a timestamp there, remember timestamps, and the thing that we saw happen. And then I've got some thoughts and odd notes, not necessarily on every observation, but things that struck me at the time. And then following that, we do the analysis in the mind map. So you see me identifying a problem and then doing the kind of why process, the analysis process, actually in the mind map with some notes there to help me. And then off the back of those notes, I then subsequently hang my need statement, or in this case, perhaps multiple statements, as we did earlier. So this is how I actually do it for real on field notes in a mind map. Let's dig a little bit further into what's here. So at 12:03, we saw Mum place a metal grater into a ceramic bowl. And I noted that the grater is square, so it does not sit very well in the bowl, and it all easily slips and moves around. So what's the problem that's going on there? Well, the grater is not well located into the bowl, which is itself sitting on a slippery granite worktop. And there's a risk of it slipping and causing injury to fingers, and that would be bad news. So why? Well, Mum doesn't have a good way to capture grated carrot as she goes. And this is because the grater has a simple open base that doesn't capture carrot. That's why she puts it in the bowl. Traditional graters are very low cost and just simple folded and pressed metal. And they don't tend to have a way to capture, certainly not to capture smaller volumes. And it's the open base of the grater that makes it easier to clean. So there's a reason for it being like that, but it's not helpful to its use. So then off the back of that analysis, I begin to write some need statements. The first one is kind of easy. Mums need a grater that is stable on any surface when grating. You could add some context to that, but you get the idea. But that why analysis has given me also some more richness. Mums need a grater that can capture material of varying volumes as they grate, so a way to capture small and large amounts of grated material. And second, from the same analysis, mums need to minimize the cleanup of graters that do capture grated ingredients. So we need to maintain the ability to easily clean a grater, like you can with the current items, but perhaps add some functionality or some ways to address these problems. And then on the bottom line, we saw Mum grip the top of the grater with her left hand, and it seemed to take quite a lot of force to keep the grater from moving around. She had a pretty sturdy grip on it there, and that would get quite tiring after a while. And that's the reason that the problem that's going on there is the grater is sharp, and she doesn't want it to move or slip, because as she's rubbing her hand up and down with the carrot, that could cause an injury to her fingers. So mums need a grater that will not cause injury in the event that it slips against whatever work surface it's being used against. And when I look at that need, I say it needs a grater. And you could reasonably say to me, but Paul, a grater is the solution, because we naturally think of a grater as a metal box type thing that we rub against. But I think a grater could be used generically in this example, a method of grating, a grater. Now, whether that's done with laser beams or pieces of sharp metal, it's still a grater. Let's move on, further on down the mind map. At 12:05, we saw Mum grate carrots down to about 1 inch. And then she discarded that last piece of carrot. And that's because she couldn't get down to the last piece of carrot without the risk of cutting her fingers against the grater. The problem here is that she has to waste a piece of carrot every time. Now, okay, it's not a lot of carrot, but it seems unnecessary. Could we make it so you don't need to do that? Well, actually, mums need to be able to grate all of the ingredients without waste if they can, and do that safely with being able to maintain their grip and manipulate items. So you see a need statement off the back of what we saw happening. At 12:06, we see Mum banging the grater to try and shake free the loose material inside there, the stuff that kind of sticks in the holes. So mums need to release and capture all the grated ingredients without secondary steps. Can't we design a grater that just doesn't jam up like that? And second to that, mums need to release and capture all the grated ingredients without waste. So let's not lose stuff inside. If you've ever tried to grate nutmeg on a grater, I'm sure that you'll lose at least half of it to what ends up in your bowl. And then a little bit further on down the mind map here, we see at 12:08, Mum scoops grated carrot into a separate measuring jug. So she's captured it in a round ceramic bowl, and then she scoops it into a separate measuring jug. And that struck me as odd because it adds an additional step in order to be able to measure the carrot. And Mum was having to kind of guess and eyeball it and go back and do more as she went through. So it adds additional cleanup and it adds additional steps to the baking process. And why is that happening? Well, because there's no good way to measure grated ingredients in the grater, and because there's no way to measure ingredients in the bowl that she used for capturing those ingredients. So a couple of needs hang off the back of that simple step that we saw happen, of scooping the carrot into a separate jug. And those needs are, Mum's need to grate the correct amount of ingredient without secondary measuring steps. Wouldn't that be nice? And Mum's need to eliminate unnecessary transfer steps associated with measuring grated materials after grating. And I'm sure you've seen that there are graters that have some kind of capture device on the bottom, but most people don't have them. And that makes me wonder why. Why do they sort of miss the need? What is it about them that doesn't appeal when people see them in the shops and they go and get the sturdy old grater that their mum used? There's something going on here, and as a designer and innovator, I want to try and solve it.